Good day, my name is Geyer and I am a lecturer at the University of Johannesburg. I lecture in the Faculty of Art, Design and Architecture in the Interior Design Department. This paper is co-authored with my colleague and senior lecturer, Mr. Andrew Gill. We present to you from the city of Johannesburg in South Africa and focus on an interior approach for the adaptive reuse and the revitalization of derelict heritage sites within an educational context. The image on this slide, I dare say, is chosen to add some drama to the presentation, and it is of the Rissik Street Post Office, which is on fire. The building was originally built in 1987. It was declared a national monument in 1978 with provincial heritage status. It was vacated by the post office in 1997. It was vandalized and set alight in 2009, and I am glad to say it is currently finally undergoing restoration. So the presentation is firstly going to provide some context to our study and introduce the city of Johannesburg by exploring a timeline of its spatial development. We will then delve into why architectural heritage conservation has become a focus in the city and how that has had an impact and influenced our interior design honors program. A case study of an abandoned heritage building will be presented from the perspective of both the architectural and interior approach. The findings of the adaptive reuse approaches to this heritage site from these two premises will then be compared to suggest the departure from the more traditional historical cultural approach as an alternative strategy for the design and production of interpretive digital proposals for preserving our architectural heritage and integrating the urban materiality of the past with the future. And here you see the context of the city in which we operate and exist. The image below at the bottom of the page is a view of Johannesburg, the inner city looking south. And if you notice, you can actually see the gold mining industrial land that is still visible in the background. Johannesburg is an infant in relation to the age of most cities in the world. It was founded in 1886. The subsequent development that has become modern-day Johannesburg was rapid and ruthless and driven by capital gain. Johannesburg is also known colloquially as Egoli, meaning the place of gold. 10 years later, we see a plan showing the first formalized spatial development and land use of early Johannesburg. This area covered on the map functioned as the CBD for 100 years, and it is still referred to as the inner city. The direction of the gold-bearing reef, the option of lateral development, racially segregate spatial development policies, and the motor car are the unique combinations of factors that shaped the spatial development of Johannesburg and still plagues the city to this day. Obviously, this has directly influenced the architectural heritage of the city. We present a brief timeline showing some of the significant developments that have impacted the development of the city of Johannesburg beginning in 1901 to present day. So in 1901, South Africa and Johannesburg fell under the British colonial rule. And in 1928, Johannesburg was awarded city status. And then if we continue from 1948 to 1990, in 1961, South Africa was declared a republic, and in 1990, the inner city declined into a state of severe urban decay known as crime and grime. And then in 1994 was our very first democratic elections. In 2010, Sandton City in the northern suburbs was established as the new central business district. We also hosted the World Cup for soccer. And in 2016, small pockets of urban renewal began taking place. These developments have resulted in the greater Johannesburg Metropolitan area situated in the Gauteng province, which covers an area of 1,645 square kilometers. This area is also known as Jozi, Joburg, or Egoli. It is the largest city in South Africa with a population of 5,782,747. It is the provincial capital of Gauteng and the wealthiest province in South Africa. It has been cited as one of the largest 50 urban agglomerations in the world and the largest city in the world that is not located on a coast, a lake, or a river. Since the onset of democracy, a large majority of buildings in the inner city have been adaptively reused for residential purposes. Both corporate spaces and light industrial use buildings have been converted to provide supporting facilities such as schools, shops, and informal business premises. Adaptive reuse has been the primary urban renewal strategy implemented, with far less new developments occurring. To elucidate, adaptive reuse is implemented as a conservation approach, and it is to be able or to modify a place to suit either the existing use or a proposed use. It usually involves a change of function or the introduction of new materials. Johannesburg does not have a very good record of architectural heritage preservation, and here you see some examples of the many underutilized, abandoned, and derelict heritage sites in the city, which is the focus of this presentation. Our research interest lies in opposing strategies and approaches for the revitalization of heritage sites, specifically from an interior design perspective. Many of these buildings, which have been allowed to deteriorate as a result of the transformation of the inner city, are heritage buildings which ironically are protected by legislation and policy. Its extent and purpose described very briefly on the slide. Architectural heritage in Johannesburg, South Africa is governed by the National Heritage Resource Act 25 of 1999. The implementation thereof is administered by the South African Heritage Resource Agency and the National Heritage Council on a national level, and the Provincial Heritage Resources Authority on a local level, with input from civil society such as the Johannesburg Heritage Foundation and the Egoli Heritage Foundation. However, as we are aware, policy alone will not guarantee architectural conservation. The actions taken in 2014 by the guerrilla art project, Beware of Color, made this very obvious in what appears to be an act of desperation in the face of frustration of what is happening in the city. A number of abandoned structures deemed to be of cultural significance were painted bright pink. In a subsequent statement released by Herbert Prince, who is the acting chairman of the Egoli Heritage Foundation, who condemned the attack in the strongest possible terms, he acknowledges that there are valid reasons behind the protest. He blames both private property developers and government for the shocking state of architectural heritage conservation in the city. And possibly of even greater concern is now, 6 years later in 2020, many of these buildings are exactly in the same state. Nothing has been done to them. This is despite the fabulous National Heritage Resource Act 25. However, we are not contesting the act, but rather we are discussing the opportunities it presents to our BA Honours students at University of Johannesburg, who have to identify a spatial design problem which is researched, and a proposal is presented for the adaptive reuse of these neglected spaces with the purpose of revitalizing these sites. Our specific interest in adaptive reuse propositions an interior approach towards architectural heritage conservation from an interior design perspective, which seems to be gaining momentum. Many of the students studying at the University of Johannesburg choose these sites to research and propose alternative uses as part of the honors degree program requirements. And we thus find ourselves at the University of Johannesburg Faculty of Art, Design and Architecture, more fondly known as the FADA building, which offers a very well-established and recognized interior design program. Students from the University of Johannesburg often identify one of the many local abandoned and derelict heritage sites as study topics for their honors degrees. They are required to research the phenomenon and produce a design proposal in response to a design problem that they have identified. Students are encouraged to consider creative ways in which to revitalize these sites to make them contextually relevant. Through a case study of a student's design proposal, a theoretical framework is presented in this study to describe the interior design approach and the relevance to heritage adaptive reuse in the city of Johannesburg, South Africa. Furthermore, our students' interior approaches require the recontextualizing from a historically cultural significant context to a contemporary culturally significant context with the use of contextually altering technology, the screen, and digital production. Of specific interest is that the findings from the sampling of student work moreover suggest that the use of new visualization technologies changes the ways of relating to and addressing the context of these heritage buildings, and in turn the design practices that have emerged. Along with the development of new technologies, the last decade has also witnessed the growth of a new architectural heritage conservation approach that is perhaps less attentive to context, social relations, and materiality, and hence to the real world setting beyond the screen. The resulting proposals from the honors program illustrate creative and thought-provoking adaptations to spatial functionality and spatial meaning-making through the use of digital visualization techniques. Of the existing heritage conservation approaches presented, adaptive reuse is the most applicable to our program. Our students are encouraged to develop a specific interior approach to adaptive reuse, which is slightly different from other interior approaches in response to our specific situation in Johannesburg, South Africa. Our process is focused on the transformation of function and meaning, allowing the students the opportunity to propose solutions to revitalize and readdress the negative socio-political associations of these contaminated sites. To contribute towards the discourse on adaptive reuse of heritage buildings from an interior design creative praxis position, we will thus analyze a case study of the drill hall and compare the traditional architectural approach to our students' interior approach. Firstly, we look at the architectural approach, which stayed true to the cultural significance of heritage preservation and the genius loci of this previously colonial military base. And now, even after restoration, which took place, it stands defunct and underused. The drill hall is 150 years old and it is classified by the National Heritage Resources Act as a heritage building. It is a grade 2 sites provincial heritage site. The drill hall is located in Johannesburg Park in Johannesburg Central Business District, and it was initially built as the headquarters of the Transvaal Volunteer Corps during the closing months of the Anglo-Boer War in 1904. The main function of the drill hall site from 1904 to 1992 was military housing, citizens, and later permanent force regiments and operational staff. During the 1980s, the drill hall served as the surveillance center for security forces. The building was neglected by the JCC from 1994 to 2002 and was occupied by many homeless people. The first fire that the site suffered from was in June 2001, where the east wing was destroyed. The second fire occurred in April 2002, and the fire destroyed the whole hall and a large part of the west wing. The hall was protected as a significant heritage site by the South African Resources Agency until the redevelopment of the site. Right, looking at the redevelopment, Michael Hart Architects was responsible for the adaptive reuse and conservation of the drill hall in 2004. According to Hart, the redesign of the drill hall site involved principles of conservation and restoration. In the redesign, Hart adopted the conservation policy of the Borough Charter. The transformation of the site from a military headquarters with limited access to a public square was intentional. Hart intended to promote freedom of access, democratization of space, and multiple uses. The redevelopment of the hall made it an easily accessible public space while retaining an enclosure that is well defined and maintains the integrity of the original building. The design approach taken to adaptively reuse the drill hall was to highlight the cultural, military, and political significance of the site. In 2012, in reply to an article in The Star, Taryn McKay referred to the drill hall as a rundown and ragged complex that is still loved and cared for. It is important to note that Michael Hart makes specific reference to important words when he talks about the redevelopment of the site. And in an article that he wrote, found on his website, some of the words that I would just like to highlight are words like the realm of physical conservation, the relationship to socio-cultural heritage of place, coming to terms and reconciliation of a past history, remembering, placemaking, enabling the memorialization of events, ideologies, and personalities to express the essences of the layered history of Johannesburg, the flexibility of use, divergent uses, reflective of the current social and political context, new meanings, preservation of the existing building, using old remnants with new structure. Sustainable architecture is achieved in the giving of new life to a site which fell into derelict. dereliction. The renewal of the city is enhanced with the identification of this significant urban fabric. The city has reclaimed its ownership over the site. The drive and will of the city's decision makers shall encourage the new city users to take the place and responsibility for the enhancement of the quality of life within the city. Now, all of that is from an article written by Michael Hart in relation to the development, but I must emphasize that a very important closing statement found on an article on the Heritage portal cited on the 2nd of March 2020 states the following: the process of transferring ownership of the drill hall from the Gauteng provincial government to the city of Johannesburg has not yet taken place. There has been a proposal to revive the site. In the meantime, the site has been neglected and crime and drugs have become a problem in the area. So the current condition of the building, as you can see on the slide, there is no maintenance. It has led to deterioration of some parts of the building. The doors and arcades are locked up or blocked with various items to prohibit the entrance from them. Okay, so let's compare this architectural approach to our students' interior approach. So our students engage in various research methods to establish design criteria and principles that are applied to the resolution of the practical proposal. This specific student study took on a pragmatic worldview approach using mixed methods to understand and develop solutions to the identified problem. Qualitative techniques based on objective approaches were used to carry out a building analysis, a local case study, and an interview, which gave an in-depth understanding of the problem and a greater understanding of the human behavior around the problem. The study analyzed primary and secondary sources in the form of international case studies and literature reviews, and the applications that were used to carry out the study were common practice-based research approaches. So through this research, the student developed the following aim: to produce a design proposal for a formalized fresh produce market that can provide a greater range of fresh produce to residents and tourists in the Johannesburg CBD. So she identified a problem in that the residents of Johannesburg CBD lack formalized fresh produce retail markets that are clean, safe, and efficient and accessible every day of the week, offering a variety of fresh produce that is specific to the various cultures within South Africa. Based upon the research findings, the following design criteria and principles were applied to the practical design to address the aims and objectives of the study. Her first objective was to contribute to the urban renewal within the Johannesburg CBD by adaptively reusing the heritage building, by redeveloping the drill hall into a fresh produce market to contribute to the revitalization of the Johannesburg CBD. Okay, the building was considered and the student suggested retaining the historical features of the drill hall through the proposed design of a produce market to ensure that the building retains its historical significance, which users can identify with. To adaptively reuse as a heritage preservation approach for the development of the drill hall, that being critical because it will maintain the original identity and heritage aspect of the building while giving it a new use that would ensure that the building maintains a tangible connection to the community and to the past. So here you see the proposal showcased through the use of new visualization technologies, which contribute to the student having the opportunity to approach the building from a non-socio-political perspective, disregarding the contaminated site and approaching it being less attentive to context, to social relations and materiality, and hence to the real world setting beyond the screen. The student considered a change in the spatial functioning and meaning by accommodating a variety of tenant needs, and incorporated new spatial meaning making by introducing a restaurant that makes use of the market produce to expose users to different cultures and their foods. The design of the restaurant focused on achieving individuality and originality. We thus present our findings as a framework which tries to establish the criteria used for a new reading of the space, which analyzes both spatial function and spatial meaning making. The framework reads or compares or evaluates the architectural versus the interior approach to the adaptive reuse of heritage sites. We are thus developing the framework to describe the interior approach. Our outcome is presented as the table that you see, which aligns with the aims of our paper, which is to contribute towards the discourse on adaptive reuse of heritage buildings from an interior design creative practice position. The delimitation of the study as the new solution cannot be tested. It is only a theoretical approach to architectural conservation and is currently only focused on the drill hall case study and cannot be applied to all heritage sites. However, the author suggests this departure from the more traditional historical cultural architectural approach as an alternative strategy for the design and production of interpretive digital proposals for preserving our architectural heritage and integrating the urban materiality of the past with the future. Thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing everybody else in the conference. Have a lovely evening or day. Bye.